Hello. I'm gonna go over the character I've been playing in Sanctum League. Um, it's my fourth character of the league. It's sort of what I dumped most of the currency I farmed into. I'm playing Tornado Shot with Trinity and then a triple LE damage bow. I'll go into why. So this bow is like pretty good. Um, Getting like triple tier 1 with something similar to this is going to cost you more than a mirror. I picked this up for like 50 divines, which isn't too bad. One of the later purchases because I didn't feel like I needed it, but I wanted it for like premium kind of stuff. Like the additional hours, you really don't need it. It's just luxury, I guess, at this point. Running the Flex Suncrest, so I've gone like I bought a shit one and divined it, and it's not too bad. Really recommended if you can't afford one with the enchant. I would just go for a rare helmet with like double attributes, life and like chaos res probably would be better than what I'm then. Well, it wouldn't be better, but it'd be decent for the budget, and it wouldn't cost too much to craft it. Quiver, something like this is pretty insane. I crafted it myself, like really luckily. So I was using attack speed essences on a additional arrow fractured base with projectile speed. I'll go into projectile speed base later when you see the tree. Yeah, and I hit flat. I think it's like tier 1 cold, tier 1 life. Yeah, tier 1 cold, tier 1 life. So I crafted flat crit and frenzy after annulling a bad mod, and then I slammed the quiver because like I was going to use it regardless, so whatever I slammed was sort of, it was going to be either dog shit, or what ended up happening was I slammed increased damage of bow skills, which is pretty nice. I think maybe crit multi would be a bit better, but I'm not 100% sure. I think flat damage seems to scale like just as well because of all the elemental damage we have. Obviously the amulet, crystallized Omniscience. I allocated utmost might because it was better than utmost intellect in terms of DPS gain. It's like really minor, but I would just check on the tree which one of those are like pretty mandatory for what you anoint, like either of those, because you path to the dexterity one and you want the additional 5%. I think the 5% attributes is better than anything else you can anoint, really. So especially if you want to avoid going for resistances on gears. I'm running 2 amethyst rings. These were quite expensive to craft. I think I ended up spending like, I want to say like 5 or 6 divines on each of them. I wouldn't recommend going for like the triple attributes if you pour. 2 would be fine, like 2 attributes and life, and then whatever resistances you need would be fine. What I was doing early on is I had 1 ring similar to this with no life, and then I had a 2 stone ring with like almost 180% all res or something absurd on it, and that was like making up all the resistances I was missing on my character, so I could easily swap it out when I'd made upgrades. I would recommend doing something like that if you're on a budget. Basically both my rings just like triple like decently rolled attributes. I think like this one's a bit shit. It's tier 1, tier 1, well it's not tier 1, it's essence, tier 2 fractured, and tier 3, so not the best. And then this one is essence tier 2 and fractured tier 2. Pretty decent. I would try to get something like this. You don't have to use amethyst rings, like if you don't want chaos res. You can use like literally any base that works for you. It might be cheaper. I think amethyst rings are more expensive in terms of like how much the base costs. The reason I have like 2 different attributes because I live searched them and picked them up pretty cheap. The gloves, just like double attributes, spell suppression and life. Anything else is a bonus. If you need resistances, go for resistances. If you can't afford double attributes, just go for the single attributes, obviously. I bought these without the physical damage. I crafted increased damage during Flask effect because of the Mage Blood, and then I slammed them and hit Fizz, which is like pretty shit. I think what I should have done was craft a different prefix because there's 2 prefixes open. I probably should have blocked Fizz, slammed it, and then crafted on the additional prefix after that. But you know, if you're in that position, don't do what I did. But these gloves, even without the physical damage, are pretty good in terms of what they get. And then on the implicits, I've gone for effective marks and intimidate, so those just seem to be the best overall damage, at least on POB, from what I saw. Boots, I've gone for fractured chaos res, strength, and then a really easy way to get good boots. So if you look at the suffixes, I have chance to avoid ailments, strength, and then obviously the chaos res. You can get boots like this really easily, so you just buy something with a fractured suffix or a fractured prefix, depending on what you want. Once you've got the 2 suffixes you want, you then want to craft suffixes cannot be changed, and then you can craft suffixes cannot be changed, craft mana, and then I believe once you've removed the prefixes, you craft mana, veil them, veiled orb. I don't really remember what I did. I'll put the process in the description, but it's really like not easy, but you can guarantee to unveil movement speed. Like I'm not 100% confident. I had to follow a guy doing it, but I wanted like avoid elemental ailments was like kind of mandatory, because obviously I'm going for the implicit on top of that, and then I've gone through it on my chest as well. So you can pick up boots like this. Obviously, I think avoid being chilled is like the worst outcome. You can get onslaught. Ideally, they would have rolled onslaught, and then I might not have had to run the silver flask, but you know, it's still free movement speed guaranteed when you have like really good boots. Like these boots cost me like, well, basically 2.5 divines to craft if you include suffixes can't be changed, and they're worth like 8 or 9, so definitely on the higher end. And then my chest, I just bought a tier 2 spell suppression chest. So tier 1 is like 10 divines because it only drops on I-86 and it's rare as fuck. So you know, tier 2 is basically all you're going to get. And then because tier 2 spell suppression is a suffix, strength is a suffix as well, and I wanted chaos res. I crafted this one myself, so I basically used the strength essence until I hit something decent, and I hit strength, chaos res, hybrid life, and I think I hit strength, chaos res, life, so tier 3 life, and then I slammed hybrid life, and then to finish it off I crafted avoid ailment immunity. So obviously with my gear I'm not 100% capped, but when I go into the tree you will see. So belt I'm using is Mage Blood. You can use like any belt. I think I had one that I was using before, I might have sold it. Like any belt with just like flat attributes on it will do the job. You don't need a Mage Blood for this build, and you can get it going on like a really cheap budget. So if you're like a bit poor, I wouldn't be like too worried about it. But yeah, so that's like the main gear. I think like just this here is like, well, the Mage Blood is over a mirror, so it is, I think the gear in general, I think it's like maybe 2 mirrors. And then for flasks I'm running granite, granite, silver, diamond, and quicksilver. Personally, I think if you don't have a Mage Blood, you should take the nodes down here, so Graceful Assault, and not pick up this cluster. So take Graceful Assault instead of the medium cluster, and replace this with Evasion Flask, just for the extra survivability. Because yeah, but I've gone for this because I've got the Mage Blood, and Onslaught flasks now scale with increased effect, so 25% increased effect on top of 65% increased effect. As you can see, my base movement speed is very high, and obviously base attack speed and all that good stuff you get from Onslaught. Yeah, so my character sheet, obviously ailment avoid, completely ailment immune. I'm just about res capped. So I'm res capped like exclusively from Omniscience. As you can see, I have like fire and cold res, so these two are like picked up from random shit on the tree. And if we look at the tree here, I've gone for cluster jewels rather than a lion eye. So you would put a lion eyes here, and then you would take these nodes here. So you would take was it the claw nodes and the dagger nodes over here. It's like the value wise, I think clusters are just better because you can get sadist, at least for like the triple LE non-fizz to cold clusters to see more value, because you've got nodes like sadist and storm rider. These two nodes are like really strong just by itself, so that's why I went for the clusters. The watches I've gone for double precision. You can pick these up for like 40 divines at this point. I sniped one yesterday for like 22 divines. I don't know how, but that's the only reason I bought it. Before this I was running attack damage and movement speed with grace. I would personally recommend, like if you're on a budget, just go for attack damage with precision, and then like anything related to the other auras that you are using. So in my case, I'm using grace, precision, determination, and herald of ice. So like determination or something grace related would be nice. Movement speed is a bonus, but they're a bit on the premium side, so if you can only afford precision, then just go for that. All my medium clusters are exact same, so repeater and streamlined. If you can get attributes, you can. So I have this one with mana regen because I actually need the mana regen. So I picked it up on a medium cluster, which is pretty nice. But yeah, medium clusters are streamlined repeater, and then this one down here, streamlined repeater. This just gives me some like random resistances, but you know, it is what it is. You can pick them up pretty cheap, and you know, 10% projectile damage, and then projectile damage, attack speed, projectile speed, attack damage. And the reason why those nodes are so good is because of bow mastery. Increases and reductions to projectile speed also apply to damage of bows. So it's just damage, which is really nice, I think, in terms of value. In terms of the tree, I've gone for depth perception here. If you have accuracy on your gear, you could save the free passives and not have to go there. I didn't. I also have a 21 precision, which is a bit annoying. One thing to mention as well, you will not be able to run Herald of Ice in this build unless you have an Enlighten support. So if you don't have an Enlighten, obviously level 4 with this helmet, but if you don't have an Enlighten level 3, you will not be able to run Herald of Ice in this build at all. I swapped out Herald of Ice for Defiance banner because I felt like I didn't need the armor with Mage Blood, because I have permanent 28k armor like in hideout. It's pretty absurd. Like that this flask gives me like 19,000 armor. It's a pretty strong item. So yeah, I've got a Lethal Pride. This just gives me 10% increased damage and 5% strength, so 5% strength here, double damage and double damage here. The rest of it's just like useless, like life regen, fire res, stun duration, all pretty dog shit. So nothing too impressive. This seed, there's a few available, so if you like don't want to go for the POB DB stuff, you can just copy that one. It's not great, but it's not bad. And I picked up like a divine, so yeah, it's not too awful. Gone for spell suppression here, life and evasion, and spell suppression on full life, and then evasion mastery for the grace reservation, reservation mastery just for the increased aura effect, and the reservation here. Critical mastery, just 25% crit strike against bosses, which is pretty nice, or crit multi against bosses. Precision mastery, or accuracy mastery, so 100% increased mana reservation efficiency of precision, all pretty mandatory for the auras are running. And then life mastery, just increased life, 10% maximum life just seemed to be the best, so that's what I went with. And I have the 50 life up here. Picked up some projectile nodes here, which isn't too bad. These might be pretty low value, but I hit level 100, so like I went for those nodes. Utmost swiftness, and then attributes mastery, so the 5% increased attributes on top of 8% dex. The life and ailment immunity, so here this wheel is what gives me ailment immunity, with only needing it on boots, with the boots implicit and the chest, so that's what makes that work, with essence rolls and the flat craft, so you need this wheel for ailment immunity. Or you can drop a dual socket and go for the shock immunity that gets converted into all other ailments dual. I think it's like Storm Rider or something the dual's called, like the green one. Down here, mark for death, so mark mastery, 25% increased effect to your marks. This is really huge. This is like 15% more damage. Your mark is really, really important. And then you get culling strike as well, which is pretty nice. And then obviously another dual socket down here with Peter and Streamline. I'm running Forbidden Flesh. This is definitely a premium. You don't need it. I would say if you can't afford it, then you just path up through here, like get this notable and that notable, rather than going to far shot, taking photo point, gathering wins. Yeah, so you don't need this. You can just go like up to here and then through to here, and then picking up these two rather than getting far shot. Far shot's just like luxury. It's definitely not mandatory. But I had a lot of currency to sink in, as you can see by just the build itself. And then I've anointed, so you can anoint either intellect here, utmost intellect, or utmost might. I would just put it into path of building and see which gives you the most. So my character, also I take the dex one anyway, right? But I have more strength than intellect, so 5% of this number is higher than 5% of that number, which is why I went for the strength one. If you have more int on your gear, then go for intellect. But I've seen, I think specifically Crouching Tuner's guide says to anoint intellect, without sort of any explanation as to why you would do that. So people might just be brainlessly following that and missing out on a bunch of increased attributes, which isn't too great. Yeah, this character is pretty solid. There's a video on the channel from earlier today of it clearing tier 16 dunes, an 8 mod map. Pretty much destroys everything. You one-shot every boss in a Sanctum, you one-shot any non-Uber boss. Overall really, really solid. Couple of improvements I would say that could be made is, if you don't care about Chaos Res, I would drop one of these and go for an onslaught on hit, synthesize ring, and then I would drop the silver flask for a jade flask for the evasion, or finding any other way to get onslaught. I've personally, with a mage blood, I would say alternative sources of onslaught would be significantly better, so this node here, and then running a jade flask, just because your character will feel significantly tankier. I don't think mage blood is like realistic. You can get a character similar to this without the premiums, so if you get rid of the additional arrows on the quiver and the bow, you know, you're still firing 9 projectiles, and the clear is still really, really solid. Gonna go over the gem links before the video is sort of finished, but inspiration, awakened, element down. I corrupted this, that's 3% quality, so that's why it's a bit scuffed. It's just so you can do eddy reflect, but if you do eddy reflect, don't flame dash, because you will kill yourself with flame dash, so maybe swap to like normal dash or something. I just couldn't be bothered. I don't like normal dash. Trinity, this just gives you a shitload more damage with the triple elements, so it's really, really strong. Increased critical stroke multiplier just for the crit multi. Awakened GMP, obviously an additional projectile there is not necessary, it's more of a premium. Obviously I think it's coming in at like, yeah, it's 28 divines, so like you don't need it, it's just decent. And divergent tornado shot, this is like also premium. It's like 1% better. I just brought it because I wanted it, and I basically have unlimited currency at this point. And then the chest 6th link is Inspiration, Ballista Totem, increased critical damage, GMP, Tornado Shot, and Focus Ballista. So Focus Ballista just gives you these ballistas here, and they will shoot 11 projectiles each, which is like an additional 33 projectiles. But it's 3 times your amount of projectiles. For me, it's 33, and the Ballista Totem does about like, I think it's like 700k DPS per projectile, so that's like an additional like 20 mil DPS, and my Tornado Shot is doing about 2.5 mil per projectile, sort of making the character for about 55 mil DPS. This character obviously like is good for bossing, but the investment cost for the damage output is like pretty terrible. This is more of like an end game currency sink build that you just want to keep juicing. I would recommend it in terms of like end game upgrades. It's really, really good. It's really fun to like hit those power spikes, like the +2 arrows on the bow, quiver, hitting stuff like a headhunter or a mage blood feels really, really good on this build. And you definitely don't need it to get the build going as well. I think I got this build going on like 50 div budget, and that was with like Forbidden Flesh and Flame and like a bunch of other premium shit. And then once I got the build online, I sold my Poison Spark character's gear and like fully juiced it with like over a mirror and then the mage blood on top of it. Yeah, it's a pretty solid build. It's really, really good for Sanctum. It's like really, really good for mapping. The POB will be in the description. But yeah, thanks for watching.